This visit coincides with the 60th anniversary of the strong diplomatic relations between our two countries, relations that are based on shared interest for mutual prosperity. This visit also takes place at a highly promising time when Japan occupies the chair of the Group of Seven, as well as its position as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Our deep-rooted bilateral relations, as well as these significant developments, make this visit in particular quite special to us. I therefore look forward, Mr. Prime Minister, to our discussions, and I anticipate that we shall make considerable progress on a broad range of subjects that are of mutual interest between Japan and Kenya. The Prime Minister and I have just concluded highly productive bilateral discussions on a broad range of very important issues. During our meeting, I affirmed to His Excellency Prime Minister that his visit coming on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Kenya and Japan is indicative of the primacy with which Japan accords Kenya as an ally. I assured His Excellency the Prime Minister that Kenya fully reciprocates this consideration. The meeting provided us with another opportunity to evaluate our shared values and mutual commitment to uphold a rules-based international order. Additionally, during our meeting, I conveyed to His Excellency the Prime Minister my high regard for Japan's long-standing bilateral partnership with Kenya in infrastructure development, trade and investment, the blue economy, and human capital development, just to mention a few. The Prime Minister and I exchanged views on numerous international issues of mutual interest, including those that Kenya, as an African state, especially desires Japan to take up in its capacity as the chair of 2023 G7. I emphasized the need to refocus effective global attention on forgotten conflicts in Africa. I've revisited our agreement with the recent G7 ministerial statement, which noted the urgent need to reinforce peace and security in the Horn of Africa, meet serious humanitarian needs, and build resilience in this region. Furthermore, I raised concern that Kenya, the Horn of Africa region, and other parts of the African continent, as well as the global South, are disproportionately impacted by global climate change and its effects. We are not only affected in actual and potential threats to our environment, but also in regard to our livelihoods and the very existence. I called on Japan and G7 to lend robust support to initiatives aimed at addressing climate change, which include the Africa Climate Summit, which will take place here in Nairobi between September 4th and September 6th this year. Kenya recognizes Japan's exemplary leadership in the climate agenda, starting all the way from Kyoto 25 years ago. Japan's commitment of 6.5 trillion yen to climate finance for developing countries for the 5 years from 2021 to 2025 is commendable. Your Excellency, we do not take for granted Japan's huge investments and support for Kenya's geothermal power development through technology, capacity building, and finance. We share with Japan the conviction that climate emergency requires substantial scaling up of financial flows to developing countries. On Africa, Kenya welcomes Japan's support for the implementation of the Africa Union's Agenda 2063, which is the continent's blueprint for sustainable development and management of strategic partnership. His Excellency and I also discussed the situation in Sudan, and we underscored the need for the international community to support Kenya, IGAD, and the African Union in ongoing diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. We further agreed to call for a cessation of hostilities immediately without preconditions, assure the safety of civilians, including diplomatic and humanitarian personnel, and allow safe passage of humanitarian assistance and the safe movement of people seeking security. In our deliberations, we agreed to align also the curricula of our two countries so that more Kenyans can access skilled and quality jobs in Japan. We have also agreed on a number of bilateral issues between Kenya and Japan on the exploitation of the geothermal resources in our country. We've also agreed on a couple of other issues on the development of Dongo Kundu, a special economic zone in Mombasa, to expedite the construction and for Japan to support Japanese investors in taking space in the special economic zone. I also undertook that Kenya is going to facilitate investment of Japanese companies and also support Japan to be able to finance Kenya's infrastructure and other developments, including the PPP arrangement around our construction of dams for purposes of harvesting and storage of water, for our irrigation, for our livestock development, and for water for use in our domestic homes. His Excellency Prime Minister Kishida and I noted the significance of the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Kenya and Japan. In the past 6 decades, the two countries have successfully collaborated on highly impactful undertakings in many sectors. At this critical milestone, we consider the vast scope of current and prospective engagements between Kenya and Japan, and accordingly resolved to pursue resolution of outstanding issues in greater detail. We also committed to a firm and equivocal statement on the aggression by Russia in Ukraine. And as Kenya, we believe in a rules-based international charter. The UN Charter provides a framework for respect of independence, territorial integrity of all countries. We've called for the cessation of the war and revert to dialogue as a mechanism of resolving any disputes. The continued war is denying opportunity for the people in Europe, creating huge roadblock on trade, especially of commodities, to the African continent, creating huge crisis of food and supply of agricultural farm inputs, including fertilizer, to our continent. And we call on the international community to work in concert and to collaborate in bringing the Russia-Ukraine war to an end.
まず初めてルート大統領とお会いできまして大変嬉しく思っております。お話しいただきましたように、外務大臣としてTICAD6に参加して以来7年ぶりの訪問となります。この7年で日ケニア関係は経済、投資をはじめさまざまな分野で飛躍的に発展をしてきております。国民レベルでの交流も多様化しており、両国が固い友情で結ばれていることを大変嬉しく思っています。
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad to be able to see you for the first time. It is my first visit in 7 years since I participated in the TICAD 6 in Kenya as Foreign Minister of Japan. During this past 7 years, Japan-Kenya relationship has grown in leaps and bounds over a wide range of areas, including economy and investment. Our people-to-people exchange have become more multifaceted, and I'm very happy that our two countries are now tightly knit with a bond of friendship.
一方で、ロシアによるウクライナ侵略が続くなど、国際情勢は一層厳しいものとなっています。スーダンの状況も強く懸念をしております。地域の安定に貢献しているケニアと連携を強化していきたいと思っています。G7 議長国としてアフリカの声を直接聞き、今月の G7 広島サミットの議論にしっかり反映させたいと思っています。
On the other hand, the international situation is becoming ever more severe amid the ongoing Russia's aggression against Ukraine. We are also strongly concerned about the situation in Sudan. We would like to strengthen coordination with Kenya, which is contributing to the stability of the region. As the country holding the G7 presidency, Japan would like to directly hear the voices of African countries and make sure that those voices are reflected in the discussions at the G7 Hiroshima summit this month.
I expressed my grave concern and added how encouraged I am about the initiative by President Ruto offering his mediation in an effort to try to resolve the situation by Africa themselves. As for Japan, I told the President that as the G7 presidency and a member of the UN Security Council, that Japan will make a proactive contribution. And as part of that endeavor, we will dispatch the special envoy for the Horn of Africa to respective countries, and in order to respond to the deteriorating humanitarian situations in Sudan and in neighboring countries, we will promptly consider emergency humanitarian assistance together with the international community, and affirmed that we will coordinate closely with Kenya. I agreed with President Ruto to further reinforce the relationship between Japan and Kenya based on the achievements of TICAD 8 held last August. Kenya is one of the leading locations for Japanese businesses to establish presence, and startups are developing enormously, and Japanese startups that resolve social challenges by innovation are also active. There is an ongoing plan for a large-scale data center by Japanese companies that is expected to become the hub for the upgrading of ICT base in Africa, and I have recognized the importance of strengthening and promoting the business and investment relations between Japan and Kenya. Japan emphasizes investment in people. In order to advance the levels of the industries in Kenya, we affirmed our cooperation to promote the cultivation of industrial human resources together.